Hi, welcome to New Horizons in Chinese Philosophy. Today, this is Lecture 8. In this lecture, we will discuss Zhuangzi. With Zhuangzi, we see an even more developed version of Daoism. Let us first go over what we said about Laozi. According to Laozi, the world consists of dispositional properties, the properties that tend to be certain ways. These are law-governed properties. For example, snow tends to be non-white. This is a natural law. Dispositional properties dispose people to a certain act. People in lower social positions are disposed to going upward. This is also rule-governed social behavior. It is law that defines what the world is composed of. It is rule that defines what human realm is like. An ideal human realm is a realm where intentional acts are removed. As a matter of fact, the book of Laozi contains a lot that cannot be systematically elucidated in a philosophical theory. The book of Zhuangzi seems to be a little bit better in this regard. It is usually regarded as one of the greatest masterpieces of Chinese literature. It has a good account of warring states' thought. It has been estimated that the contents may span a period running from the 4th century BCE to the end of 3rd century or even beyond that period. The work was first edited by the father and son bibliographers Liu Xiang and Liu Xin of the Han Dynasty. The present version of 33 chapters was put together by Guo Xiang of the 3rd century AD. The first 7 chapters are classified as the inner chapters. Chapters 8 through 22 make up the outer chapters, and the rest are miscellaneous chapters. Unlike Laozi, Zhuangzi was given a historic record in Sima Qian's book. He was said to be a man of the 7th weak and declining state of Song. He once held a position in a place called Qiyuan. He had an exceptional personality endowed with great intellectual power and dialectic ability, soaring poetic imagination, and amazing wit. Zhuangzi shares with Laozi a philosophic vision of Dao. Quote, dark and hidden, the Dao seems not to exist, and yet it is there, fluid-like, without form, and yet spirit-like. The 10,000 things are sustained by it and do not know it. This is what is called the source and the root, end quote. Quote again. Look for it, but it has no form. Listen, but it has no voice. The Tao cannot be described. Described, it is not the Tao. What gives form to the formed is itself formless, end quote. So, Tao is not physical, but spiritual. It cannot be captured with human language. However, Zhuangzi seems to go further to explore how it is that human language is incapable of describing Dao. Quote, there is a being, there is not being. There is a not yet beginning to be non-being. Suddenly, there is non-being, and of being and non-being we know not which is and which is not. Now, I have said something, but I do not really know whether my saying is saying something or nothing. End quote. There is supposed to be a continuum from pre-non-being state through non-being state to being state. This is actually the law-defined dispositional property. What Zhuangzi is skeptical about is how we can use language to pin down dispositional property like this. If dispositional property cannot be captured with human language, how can we make sense of those claims concerning dispositional properties? Dispositional properties are hard to capture in human language. Dispositional acts are equally challenging to understand. Dispositional acts are acts to which people are somehow disposed in their life. Dispositional acts can only be accounted for in a rule-governed life. Chapter 2, on seeing things as equal. This chapter begins with trance-like experiences of the mystic Nanguo Ziqi. Quote, he sat leaning on his armrest, staring at the sky and breathing with a vacant look as if he had lost his ego. Yancheng Ziyou, who was standing by in attendance, inquired, what is this? Can the body really be made to become like a withered tree, and the mind like the dead ashes? The man who sits here now is not the man who was sitting here before. End quote. In this case, dispositional acts manifest themselves in dispositional properties. What seems to be mystic is the rule that governs human life. In the book of Zhuangzi, there is an account about a dialogue between Confucius and Laozi. Confucius observed Laozi in a state in which his form and body seemed shrunken like a withered tree. Laozi said, quote, I was letting my mind wander to the beginning of things, end quote. Prior to existence of the phenomenal world, intentional acts work to implement normative principles. By those normative principles, the phenomenal world operates in the way it does. This is to be more elaborately illustrated in Confucius's advice to his disciple Yan Hui. Confucius advises Yan Hui on how to achieve the higher gnosis by, quote, letting his mind fast, end quote. Another quote, unify your will, don't listen with your ears, listen with your mind. No, don't listen with your mind, but listen with the qi. Hearing stops with the ears. The mind stops at signs or concepts. But qi is empty, and yet all things depend on it. The Tao gathers in emptiness alone. Emptiness is the fasting of the mind, end quote. Again, intentional acts are not to work in empirical world. They work to implement normative principles by which empirical world operates. In the empirical world, only dispositional acts are allowed to the effect that the whole world is totally rule-governed. So, intentional acts work beyond phenomenal realm, and dispositional acts work within the phenomenal realm. Zhuangzi gives more detailed illustration of intentional acts in his account of skills or crafts. There is a hunchback cicada catcher who unfailingly catches cicadas with his sticky pole. Confucius is astounded by his skill. The cicada catcher tells him that he is able to bring himself to a state of mind where he, quote, is aware of nothing but cicada wings, not wavering, not dipping, not letting any of the 10,000 things take the place of cicada wings. How can I help but succeed? Unquote. Confucius turns to his disciples and says, quote, he keeps his will undivided and concentrates his vital spirits, unquote. The cicada catcher can get his intentional acts in tune with what is going on in the world. As a result, the whole world operates in a regular rhythm. This is a world that is rule-governed. Intentional acts work to bring about rule-following behavior. While Lao Tzu tries to purge the human realm of intentional acts, Zhuangzi put intentional acts on the driving seat to start the engine of the whole world. The world, in essence, consists of dispositional properties. Based on life experiences, Lao Tzu highlights certain dispositional properties, such as being upward, being vitalistic, being increasing, being strengthening, and so on, so forth. Zhuangzi seems to go further into metaphysical realm, quote, from the point of view of their difference, if we regard a thing as big because there is a certain bigness to it, then among all the 10,000 things, there are none that are not big. If we know that heaven and the earth are grains, and that the tip of a hair is a range of mountains, then we have perceived the law of difference, unquote. The property of being big does not seem to present a substantial part of the world. Rather, the property of being bigger gives a true picture of the world. This is a differential property. It is similar to dispositional property in that it is also a second-order property, but it is not the same as dispositional property, since it remains to be neutral as to directionality. Differential property is absolute in a quantitative sense. It constitutes metaphysical aspect of the world. Dispositional property is a manifestation of the underlying law. It is not metaphysical in itself. When Zhuangzi says, quote, man claims that Mao Qiang and Lady Li are beautiful, but if fish saw them, they would dive to the bottom of the stream, unquote. The property of being beautiful is a metaphysical property, independent of human perception. The two beauties even strike fish as beautiful. We might construe this as a differential property. What Zhuangzi wants to emphasize is that Mao Qiang and Lady Li are more beautiful than anyone else. It is the property of being more beautiful that constitutes metaphysical reality, the quantitative aspect of reality, to be more specific. Like dispositional property, differential property shows the becoming state of the world. Differential property is superior to dispositional property in characterizing quantitative aspect of the becoming world. This gets us to metaphysical reality. It seems to Zhuangzi that the inexhaustible variety and creative ingenuity deeply rooted in metaphysical reality than its order and regularity. We do not see so much order and pattern as inexhaustible grandeur and protein changeability in the Zhuangzi. In the Autumn Floods, chapter 17 of Zhuangzi, we have the enormous flooding waters of the great river flowing into immensity of the North Sea. Peng, the rockbird, rises into the air 10,000 li and surveys the vast and infinitely varied landscape below, stretching into infinity. In another passage, Zhuangzi presents us with images of the incipient germs of animal and plant life. The incipient germs produce entirely different creatures depending on the natural habitat in which they find themselves. Quote, in the water, they become brick vines. On the edge of the water, they become frogs' robes. If hill slopes get rich soil, they will turn into crow's feet. The roots of crow's feet turn into maggot, and their leaves turn into butterflies, which are turned into insects that live under the stove. So, all creatures come out of these incipient germs and return there too. Unquote. This reminds us of ancient Greek atomist philosophy. According to this philosophy, nature consists of two fundamental principles, atom and void. Philosophical atoms come in an infinite variety of shapes and sizes, each indestructible, immutable, and surrounded by a void where they collide with the others or hook together, forming a cluster. Clusters of different shapes, arrangements, and positions give rise to the various macroscopic substances in the world. It is obvious that the becoming world constitutes metaphysical reality. But what Zhuangzi wants to reach is metaphysical understanding of the world rather than empirical observation of the world. The rockbird represents the grandeur and freedom of the man who looks at the world from the standpoint of the higher gnosis as opposed to the cicada, the little dove, and the frog, who represent the ordinary man locked into the conventional outlook of our ordinary little understanding. In a famous passage, one of Zhuangzi's allegorical persona, little understanding, asks great impartial harmony, quote, within the four cardinal directions and the six realms, that is, heaven, earth, and the four directions, how do the 10,000 things arise? Unquote. Great impartial harmony goes on to delineate some of the enduring patterns and regular principles of the natural world. There are the interactions of yin and yang, the four seasons, quote, producing and killing each other, unquote. There are the principles of attraction and repulsion, which account for sex and other phenomena. There is the principle of condensation and rarefaction. There is the interaction of fast and slow process, and in human life, the fluctuations of misery and happiness, which seem to relate to all these principles. Quote, there are the principles of the successive order of things and mutual interaction, and the principle of an alternation of rising to dominance and then retreating, unquote. Zhuangzi then goes on to assert that, quote, while these names and realities can be recorded and while their details and subtleties can be noted, these are the properties which belong to things. All that words can exhaustively describe, or that our ordinary knowledge can attain to, is the level of things. The man who looks to the doll does not try to follow what has disappeared, nor to find the source whence it has arisen, unquote. In the becoming world, there exist enduring patterns and regular principles. They are accessible to human observation and conception. But they are not human inventions. They are part of the world. They are part of phenomenal world. The world we can cognize and conceptualize. However, this is not what Zhuangzi aims at. Zhuangzi's aim is to approach the Tao. Tao is what makes phenomenal world operate as it does. We see what Zhuangzi pursues is not science per se, but metaphysics in general.